This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb. Hi, everyone. This is the host of Get Inspired with Dr. Barb, Dr. Barbara Vokatis, podcast on education. And many times we talk about innovation in education. There are a lot of incredible innovative practices that many schools, school districts introduce, and children have opportunity to participate and feel better, learn better. And this is what I think schools and education is about how kids experience education. That is just so important. Today, I have absolutely incredible guest because he's not only a leader, but educational leader, but leader of a school district. So some of you might know that school districts are run by superintendents. So that's a very important position. They have a lot on their plate to consider. But superintendent, who is our guest today, and his name is Dr. Daniel Dooley, he's special because in addition to his very intense job, no doubt about it, sometimes not too many people want to be superintendents because it's a very involved position. But he also has done something incredible. He has initiated, established, and we will talk more about it, district's own therapy dogs program. And that is different because I don't know another superintendent who has done something like that. It is really different and absolutely amazing because the benefits of including therapy animals, and maybe not always necessarily dogs, are incredible and known from research and from anybody who has experienced this incredible practice. And also, Dr. Dooley is, as far as the superintendent, he's the superintendent of the Absecon school district, and that school district is in New Jersey. And also, he is the chairman of the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professional, an incredible association that is very successfully, I think, trying to just unify the whole field that consists of all kinds of and many therapy animal organizations. But Dr. Dooley, welcome on my show, Get Inspired with Dr. Barb. I'm very excited.
Dr. Barb, thank you for having me. I am also very excited. I shared to you right before we got started. This is I've listened to many podcasts, but this is my first time as a guest. So thank you for having me. And in your introduction, the one thing that really stuck out was innovative, right? So, and that really struck home because one of the messages I share consistently with my learning community, especially some of my veteran staff members, are the children that we're teaching today are not the same children that we were teaching 25 years ago, or even 5 years ago or 6 years ago pre-pandemic. Our children have changed. Our children needs have changed. And the way that we address those needs and provide, what really brings them along and makes gains, whether it's academic needs, social, emotional needs, has changed. And we have to be innovative and we have to think outside of the box. But I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. I am beyond excited because also based on what you just said, that the needs have changed. And I am an educator working in the field of educating future teachers and current teachers. And educational programs, yes, they start to consider social emotional needs as a part of educating teachers, including future teachers. But it's just not enough. I mean, if you looked around at educational programs across the country, how many professors would you see who would be teaching about the power of therapy animals in the classroom? I don't think very many. It would be very accidental. I am one of them only because I have my own therapy dog. I take my dog to the classroom. I see the power of what can be done. Of course, when we do this practice very responsibly because animals' needs have to be considered very much so. But we are behind in the field of educating teachers in this area that you are just talking about right now.
Yeah. And, I think that that's one of the reasons that the organizations like Pet Partners and AAAIP are so important because it's not being taught and the real benefits that we're The data and the studies between the animal-human bond have been out there for quite some time. But, as educators who have very full plates, the duties and the jobs and the responsibilities are tenfold as we're serving, sometimes as, our nurses are serving as the primary caretakers and physicians in some of our socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. And, the things that our teachers are coming in, that kids are coming in with, the teachers are no longer just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's much deeper than that. So, how are we reaching these children, and, how are we meeting their needs, which are significantly different than they were just a few years ago. And, there was no blueprint when I started this endeavor 10 years ago in a socioeconomically disadvantaged district that was 100% free and reduced lunch. We were really trying to find ways to think outside of the box. As a district, we didn't have a whole lot of money in a previous job of mine. And we were just looking for ways to cost effectively meet children's needs. And, we can teach the best lessons in the entire world. But if children are not ready to receive those lessons in the classroom through behaviors or social, emotional, or confidence, or, some of the traumas that they've experienced, or whatever the case may be, that lesson is going to go for naught. And so, in that previous setting in Cumberland County, New Jersey, which is the poorest county of all 21 counties in New Jersey, and we were in the poorest town within Cumberland County. So, and the reason I mention socioeconomics is because it's the number one indicator of student success. But we know that real poverty comes along with some real obstacles. And so those students were up against it, but I saw the way that the teachers came every day to make a difference. People in education will say that it's a calling, not necessarily a job. And that couldn't be truer in some of the areas where our teachers and professionals are needed the most. But, we had to think outside of the box of ways to connect and to relate and de-escalate and have children, incentivize children to make good decisions socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and academically.
It's amazing. I don't think I realized that you have started it. You started it in a different school district with such incredible challenges. But again, trying to figure something out, right? Thinking outside of the box. Innovation we often think about something like technology wise, and these things are expensive. But what kind of innovation are you going to do to help children socially, emotionally? I've seen children who shut down. I mean, the anxiety levels these days just really high in the youngest children. There is no way you can teach them. How can they, like you said, how are they going to receive that teaching, and how they going to learn? So what happened? Something popped into someone's head as far as the idea of let's start a therapy dog program. If you could take us to this moment, because this sounds like a really incredible moment, no doubt about it.
So when I was in my previous district in Cumberland County, I was also doing research for my dissertation, and I created an interventional program based upon the 5 core competencies of social and emotional learning. And what we found after we ran through a mentoring program for only 10 days, about 15 minutes to half hour a day check-in, but it was very intentional based upon these 5 core competencies. And what we saw was that the immediate effects afterwards, children's academic success, their sense of belonging, was increased, and their absenteeism went down, and their number of behavioral incidences and negative interactions also decreased. Now, that lasted for about 60 to 90 days after the intervention, and then you started to see, some of those old behaviors creeping back in, which really calls for that constant reminder and building in that responsive classroom process where you take time to teach these skills, not in isolation, but sometimes even as teachable moments right in real time. So that's what kicked this off, trying to think of ways to really meet children's needs outside of the box. And through my studies, I always seem to run into, some evidence of the animal-human bond, or, a farm in England that was connecting children or adults alike. But I think the most transformational time actually was, I was in my studies, I was in my previous district, and my dad became very ill. He was every time he was in the hospital for long periods of time, he would have to go to a rehabilitation center so he could get stronger to be able to come back home. And every visit, no matter how happy he was to see me, my sister, my mom, he always asked about the dog. So after like a year or so of this, I took some obedience classes, and it was much easier to have animals certified, but went ahead through the process, got a fancy vest for him, and surprised him while he was in the hospital for one of his long stays. And I was so excited because he hadn't, he would go months, and that's what he would, ask for. In fact, towards the end, it's the only reason he would get out of the chair to let the dog out, or to feed the dog, or to interact with the dog in some way. But on that first day, I was so excited to see my dad and bringing the dog. But I was probably about 40 or 45 minutes late getting to his room. But the reason was not because we didn't show up on time. Every single person down that hallway I walked were coming to their doors or calling from the beds. And we stopped at every room along the way. And it wasn't but the second or third visit, word got out that we were coming, and they were lining the hallways like a parade. And so I knew in that moment, as an animal lover, that bond was real for me. But to see how impactful and effective it was for other people really kind of always stuck with me. And then I started to see some context of the benefit animal-human bond and other people are using, and then it just kind of naturally fell into the social and emotional world in which I was then currently studying. And then with the implementation of superintendent in Cumberland County, there was just so many correlations and so many alignments that I almost couldn't not do it. And really to meet some of those really intensive social and emotional needs, behavioral needs, any shot was a good one. And so, we did it effectively, but there was no one else doing it at the time. There was no AAAIP. Maybe, Pet Partners was out there, but it certainly wasn't breaking through into the schools like it is now. And so, we knew that we were interacting with people's most prized possessions and their children. And we knew that we had to dot every I and cross every T because it was something innovative and not done before. And, we took it slow, but the children in which it impacted and the effects that it had on them were transformational. And I remember the first situation, Sky was about 13 months old, and he was already 90 pounds. He went on to, he's 130 pounds today. And a child was in meltdown or crisis in a classroom, and the teacher had gone ahead and take all the students out of the classroom and left the one child in there with a school psychologist and a counselor. And it seemed like whatever had this child so upset, he was able, and it was a third grade classroom, he was able to transfer that disdain in that moment or that contempt from whatever he was mad at to one person, to the next person, to the next person. Even if we were sending in the nurse, we were sending in the school psychologist, and that anger and that fear and whatever was going on inside of that young child at that time, whoever walked through that door was the face of that for him. After some desks were turned over and, books were cleared and so on and so forth, I said, let's bring in the dog. Let's bring in the dog. And, some of my colleagues at the time were like, I don't think it's safe. And I'm like, all right, well, stay with me. We'll figure it out. And plus being, almost 100 pounds and young, and, I wasn't overly concerned about him getting hurt, right? I was with him. We had a team there. But what I noticed was Sky kind of kept his distance, and he wanted to be on the perimeter. But there was an immediate effect to that child who saw the animal. He would look over. You could tell it was snapping him out of it, whatever that issue was, that turmoil was. And he was able to reconnect in a way that was different than he was connecting with the adults in that room. And so I actually took Sky off the leash, and I'll never forget this. You know, Sky did large circles around the perimeter of the classroom. And if you've ever seen a child in meltdown or crisis, at the end, they almost collapse. All the energy, the exertion, the emotion, right? It's exhausting.
It is.
And so as the child began to de-escalate, Sky's circles became tighter and tighter until this child was fully not only sitting down, but leaning to the side. And Sky went and laid next to him. And, you know, the child wasn't get away from me. The child wasn't any of those reactions that we were getting as adults. And, you know, the child seemed to engage, and we were able to, do you want to walk the dog back to class? We were able to make some real gains from there. And I said, wow, there is absolutely something to this. And that is, you know, we didn't really have a starting point 10 years ago, but has been, you know, it took everything that I had hypothesized about, that I had read about, that I had carefully created and aligned into reality within one of Sky's first days in the building. And from then on, I knew that this program had value. And if it had value for that child, it had value for many. Then from there on, you just identify what your children's needs are. And you identify what direction your animal and those who are trusted with the animal are able to engage in. And you try to find the neutral ground or the common ground of both of them. So if it's social and emotional, okay, what is this dog up for? What is this dog capable of? What comes natural to this dog? And again, no one taught Sky to walk in. I had only had him for a few weeks to do big circles around the room and to, you know, come and cozy up with a student. Nobody taught him that. It was instinctual. It came natural. And then what I found in Sky is that he needed that attention and he needed that connection. So, you know, it's about picking the right animal, the right professionals, and matching it with the right situations. But so there's a lot to it. You know, schools that come to visit or that want us to speak to their Board of Educations, I say start small, right? What you see in front of you in 2 animals here servicing over 600 children a week, that's not where we started 10 years ago. It'll take you time to warm up to that. I tell them, get the paws in the holes, right? My colleagues are so tired of me saying that, but it's always fitting, like start small. And also think about your learning community. What is actually needed? And allow that to guide your program. And I say all the time, you know, without that, beginning with the end in mind, what are you trying to accomplish? How is this mutually beneficial for the animal, for the child, and for your professionals in the building? When you're able to determine that, it's no longer, and it will never be, a dog and pony show. It has real validity and a real place in community schools.
What an incredible story, Dr. Dooley. At that time when you were kind of like taking the risk, right? Here is my dog, and I'm just going to see what's going to happen with this child who obviously cannot settle down. You can send, I don't know, a team of psychologists, you name it, right? You name it. Nothing is working because you just keep sending adults. And in many of these cases, I mean, children just don't have trust with adults. They got hurt by adults, right? Whatever the situation is, but these adults are not trustworthy for a variety of reasons. At that time, were you already superintendent or you were principal? What was your position at that time?
Yeah, so I was actually, being my first superintendent job, I was also, sounded like a good idea at the time, but I was also principal of 2 schools in that role. So I was superintendent and principal of the elementary and middle school. You know, and you know, it was a community that knew that their needs were exasperated in comparison to some surrounding communities. And luckily enough, we had the freedom to be able to explore that, right? And the acceptance of whether you're superintendent or board of educations to allow your staff to, within good sound practice, explore and further develop. That's really important. And when I got to Absecon, I wanted to see what the needs were here in all facets, right? On day one, I didn't want to show up with my 200 and whatever pound animals. We're here. And once October, November came, I had board members and community members asking, where are the dogs? Where are the dogs, right? So, the way that you implement it has to be responsible, and it really has to be based upon the children's needs. Taking that chance, and as an educator, whether it's New Jersey or anyone dealing with children, if you don't go home exhausted, you're not doing the job right.
Yeah.
And so sometimes taking on one more thing or something you don't know the outcome, or that's going to take a little bit extra effort in the moment where you have nothing, you feel as if you have nothing more to give. And whether it's in the world of therapy, work, or introducing a new reading program, I think when we can go inside of ourselves and say, okay, I'm already max and I'm at a 10, but if I can just find a little bit more to give, I think I can get over the top with this or that. And surrounding yourself with like-minded people that also have that same mentality, which is something we've really been able to do here in Absecon. And so it makes the journey and adding those additional things so rewarding, but also effective. So, there's a lot of things that go into it. I can understand boards' hesitations. One of my principals always says, in different situations, I have to see if the squeeze is worth the juice. And when I really thought about that, I think it's relevant to this situation. A board or a superintendent, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but how many parent phone calls am I going to get? What does this do for insurance?
Oh my gosh, right.
What's the liability here? And that's the nice part about this actually existing now, right? So New Jersey legislation just passed through the state Senate a bill that would provide grant monies to participating elementary schools to implement therapy dogs across the state of New Jersey. It passed unanimously through the Senate. It is gone, and I had the honor of testifying in front of New Jersey State Assembly, not this December, to December before, but it has gone unanimously through their educational committee and then their health committee, and now it's back to education. But they're expecting that to go through and to be voted upon with the governor-elect. And so, when we think about starting this program 10 years ago and now having a possibility of implementing it in specific New Jersey elementary schools, but eventually all who will benefit from. Just to see it grow from here to there has just been so rewarding, and really wasn't anything that we had in mind starting the program. We were just trying to meet the needs that were in front of us at the time.
I mean, the growth is incredible, and really congratulations on this, because you've been involved, obviously, right? For doing it for 10 years, you have data. How many dogs right now in the school are active doing this work within the school districts? If you could tell us the number of the dogs.
Sure. We have 4.
Yeah.
We have 4. So Sky and Hope are originals.
Yeah.
Dogs only go 8 to 10. Sky is retired as of last year. He'll be 11 years old. I'm still bringing him in an hour or 2 a week because
I love that.
the new puppy that we have does everything that he does. So who better to learn from within the classrooms while we're finishing up the training and certification process. My 9-year-old female, they're all my puppy and the 2 older are Greater Swiss Mountain Dogs. And then we just went out and got a Golden Retriever. And Golden Retrievers fit in wonderfully to what we're doing. And this program has expanded so much, and there's such an outcry for it that on March 1st, we'll actually be opening our first therapy animal farm. It'll be the first one in the state of New Jersey. It'll have a few goats and a few sheep.
Yeah.
Absecon vet and one of the owners over at Absecon Vet, have gone ahead and showed their willingness to partner with us and treat the animals and make sure that they're all at no charge. Atlantic Care has just given us a pretty significant grant for this endeavor. Tanger Outlets looks like they're going to jump on board. We have a grant out to NJEA, and Merck has jumped on board and said, all the vaccinations, all the treatments, we want to provide that for this initiative for free, no charge.
When is it starting? When is it officially?
March 1st is the anticipated day where the new goats and new sheep are done being bottled fed and are weaned, and there's a lot to this.
It's incredible because there's so much potential for children interacting with animals outside. Obviously, those certain types of animals, it will make more sense to have them outside and kids interacting with them, which is incredible, right? Getting outside, interacting with animals. And I would be very happy to share when this becomes official. I can share on my channels, on my social media. That would be great news to share, definitely. And I wanted to ask you, and congratulations on all these initiatives, because this is, like you're saying, you had no idea that this would expand. All you had is knowing deeply inside of you that something had to be done. Yes. And something that makes sense. What are you going to do? Bring more adults with expertise in psychology to the school? How is this going to help these kids if they don't really even trust these adults that much? I wanted to ask you, there's two questions I have. What do you think is so special about this connection? Why the best intended adult kind is not going to be able to make this cut as far as being able to connect with the child who is distressed, who has, like you said, to all kinds of traumas, some of the things we might not even know about, what's going on sometimes at home. And here there is a connection with the animal. What is so special about it? We're all trying to figure it out, and there are studies about it, but what do you think?
Yeah, and so I think we've touched on it, right? Whoever that adult is walking in, children are easily able to, the chances are, as unfortunate as it is, those traumas and that neglect or whatever's going on with that child is at the hands of someone, at least in general, another human being.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a immediate mistrust with that that doesn't exist with that animal. And, it works as long as you don't have an immediate allergy or a fear, right? Even though there is some room there if everyone's in agreements and there's a lot of progress that can be made. But if the child is at least not resistant to it, the magic that exists there, and that's a great question. People have always asked me, how do you know that this works?
Right.
And the qualitative, anecdotal information that I'm able to provide leaves people in awe. But what we wanted to do is really kind of drill down and figure out quantitatively, what does the data say? Can we actually measure this? So when I'm asked, what makes this program so special, or is it actually effective? I can use real data and real situations to show the effectiveness of this program. For instance, something as easy as the dogs being in counseling sessions or working with my guidance counselors. A lot of that is talking about things that are going on, but how they can address those issues to better perform within school. So a lot of that is goal setting. And we noticed that, and when we started keeping the numbers, when we set a goal with a middle school child, both with and without a therapy dog being used as an incentive, meaning that they can come down and during that session with the counselor, the dog would be present, or that they can walk the dog or interact with the dog or have a visit with the dog, whatever is decided, that in a 5-week period, children who were set a common goal with their guidance counselor, social, emotional, behavioral, academic, across the board, whatever it is, 21% of the time met their goal with no dog. Okay, so their reward was something other. Okay, a homework pass, a dress down, something. Okay. When you added the dog, 64% of those students accomplished their goal in a 5-week period. Now we take that to, we'll stay on the social and emotional component of things. We have a multisensory cool down room, so to speak. If a child is in crisis or meltdown, they go to this multisensory room in which they are provided one of our guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists, and working on techniques for de-escalation. We are able, without an animal, to return children back to the classroom in under 18 minutes. Now, that's a huge testament to the knowledge and, the experience and the devotion of our staff. But when you add a therapy dog to the mix, and most of the people that are certified, it's my entire child study team, right? So every learning consultant, guidance counselor, school psychologist, plus your reading specialists and teachers and special ed teachers and so on and so forth. But when the dog comes, we are able to get those same children returned back to class in under 3 minutes.
Wow.
So, now our sample size is, our N is 50. And many of them are repeat, that data is reflected with the same student on a few different occasions. But we're also just able to see the response with no dog versus with dog, with the animal. And then the final one that, for me, from the area that I came with the social and emotional intervention that I created and so on and so forth, that's like a natural fit to be a motivator, to de-escalate, to be able to take whatever situation you're in and kind of break that. But the academic success that we've had amongst our first and second graders. So last year in the January benchmark, 41% of our first and second graders were reading at the end of the year, the June standard. Okay. So it's in January, and 41 are either reading at the end of the year or higher than what they're anticipated to gain at the end of the year. That's pretty good. But when we went back and noticed that the children that were working in our SMILE program, Silent Mentors in Literacy Education, and that were working with the reading specialists and the librarians, of the 41% of for all first and second graders that were reaching that level of achievement of 41%, that 86% of them were from the SMILE program or working with the animals.
Wow.
Right? So, I of course would love to continue those studies. So the problem, and we've mentored 50 districts statewide.
Yeah.
But everybody's using them for different reasons and has different personnels, and they're being used with different. So it's hard to simulate that to be able to compare apples to apples in the form of research. Something Michelle Pick from Rowan and I have discussed many times, and we're really narrowing down because I think that that's what's missing from the field, especially in education, right? We can, if anybody who's seen the interaction knows that it works. But to have that actual data in multiple areas with multiple sets of kids in different grade levels to show the benefit, I think is, once we're able to get that out there, it'll become even more common in schools, even though it's popping up everywhere, as we speak.
I think for some stakeholders, hearing anecdotal data is powerful, and this data, is powerful. There's no question about it. That's mostly when I present about it, that's what really makes a big impact on people. The stories of what this kid did, how this kid interacted with my dog and what happened as a result. That's really the most powerful thing. But with some stakeholders, they want those numbers. And correlational numbers are not even enough, right? They would like something experimental. But like you said, experimental studies are difficult because you have to rule out some other factors, right? That could have influenced better reading or whatever else that you're trying to measure. That's not easy. And even without studying with dogs, these experimental studies are always the hardest to really do. But I am more qualitative type, but I think the powerful part is always maybe two things, right? There's a little bit of quantitative, a little bit of qualitative. Well, but that's great that you have conversations about how to make it more count in terms of numbers. I mean, nothing is about numbers. If you talk about interaction between the animal and the child, this is not about numbers. This is about
Mm.
energy that they both share. And that's how things become different, right? I think that more also studies in the field of maybe anthropology and some other areas would help here too. Because how do you measure the energy that the kid receives from the dog? This
Yeah,
is not something you
absolutely.
can measure. Definitely more studies, and including quantitative ones too, would help too. But I think since New Jersey did this incredible step with legislative activity, that should somehow be contagious, and other things like that, similar things like that should happen in other states, right? What do you think? What do you think is the future, the vision that you have, or maybe steps that are taking already place and I don't know about?
Yeah. So, AAAIP and the wonderful people at Pet Partners actually joined me in meeting with the Hawaiian Department of Education, and they're tens of thousands of students over all of the
Yeah.
Hawaiian Islands, but they're looking to do this with all aged, members of their learning communities from preschool all the way through high school. And it's funny because when I talk to the New Jersey Assembly, or when I talk to superintendents, or when I talk to representation from the Hawaiian Department of Education, what they are most interested in is the quantitative effect. Because, right?
Right.
And you're so right. It's hard to what is so emotional,
Right.
right? And what is so connecting. It's the antithesis of, you know, it, it's all about the anecdotal and the experience and the
Mm-hmm.
individual experience, and how do we actually measure that in numbers. But that's what the people making decisions are most
Yeah.
interested in hearing, because, we know as leaders that we make decisions. We learn to, I think good leaders do both, right? They follow their gut and they also see that connection, but
Mm-hmm.
they also have to be grounded
Yeah.
and have something to rely on for those who don't necessarily believe at the same level the actual facts of the situation. And, the more we continue to grow, and with all of these counterparts in New Jersey and these other initiatives beyond New Jersey, I think we're going to get there. And it's
Yeah.
just going to continue to pave the future and the future benefits for animals in schools.
Absolutely amazing. So much incredible work. And I mean, definitely 10 years ago, you had no idea, right? This will be happening. But that's what happens when we just decide to be bold and let's just try it. I mean, what's wrong? What wrong can happen if you just try it? And I just would like to ask you also,
And just
there's
as a
some,
side
yep,
note, I'm
yep.
I'm, I'm reflecting back. The Board of Education in the commercial township where I was in Cumberland County passed this initiative on a 5-4 vote. So it almost never happened, but
Yeah,
luckily enough, we squeaked it through, and people were patient enough, to allow this to get off the ground. But I think, when we talk anecdotally, every staff member that sees this interaction,
yep.
or every child who goes and sits at the kitchen table or the ball field and talks about the experience and what it meant for them, if you're doing it for the right reasons, and you have the best interest of that child, someone's most prized resource, and the animal and the people that are implementing, this will succeed. This will take off, and it will speak for, on its own. But, it's interesting that this almost didn't happen on that
I
5-4
know.
vote.
So much drama behind something like that, right?
Sure.
It always is the case. And there's just one more question I would like to ask you. Let's say somebody wants to start something like that, maybe not district run own therapy animal program,
Yeah.
maybe just kind of like, well, let's bring some volunteering therapy dog teams. And let's say it's a teacher, but they just don't know like what to really do. I mean, do I go to the principal? What do I even say? And what is the right way of saying something like that, just so you don't ruin it from the start? What would you
Absolutely.
advise?
I would go I would go fact based. And even if it's not with data, for instance, here is what I'm trying to accomplish because I see this deficit within our population.
Yep.
And here are some schools that have done it to address this specific issue. Here are some data that exists through studies and such of the animal human bonds in this area. And I think for us initially, cost is a real issue, right? We can adopt a reading program that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Totally.
We were able to do this with virtually no additional cost to our school district. And then you have to address the fears. What are those in power? What are they fearful of, right? Litigation, right? If something was to happen, somebody was going to get knocked over or inadvertently scratched, what would that mean for a district? And, so I think between the benefit and then really taking and presenting this in a way that minimizes those negative fears is the best way to present this. So, all right, we have a reading deficit within our first grade population. And here's some data that shows where this animal-human bond can work. And I've had some great success with certified rabbits in the reading space as well, right?
Unbelievable,
It's
yeah.
not so, and believe it or not, I think cats are the number one growing therapy animals in this space right now. And I think post-pandemic, everyone went out, or
Incredible.
during pandemic, everyone went out and got a dog because they were home.
Yep.
But now they're realizing that, dogs are a lot of effort, and maybe there's
Yeah.
some leadway with therapy cats. And so it's not just dogs. I just speak to dogs as a representative for that value of the animal-human bond, and it's the area in which I know. It appears soon I'll know a little bit about goats and sheep as well.
You will. Wow.
Yeah,
Look at
so
that. It's amazing. Absolutely.
but I think it's addressing those who are in charge with Superintendent, Board of Education, addressing their fears, showing them that this has been done before, and that there's real benefit to children. Again, getting back to my middle school principal's analogy, the squeeze is absolutely worth the juice of what you're going to get from this.
This is absolutely amazing, Dr. Dooley. Now, I know as a busy superintendent, you are probably not very active on social media. Let's say if somebody would like to follow what the school is doing, follow some news about your program, or maybe you on social media, are there any accounts, places that our audience can go to kind of monitor and maybe help out, whatever?
Absolutely. So abseconschools.org, ABSECON, schools with an S on the end, .org is our website. We also are at Absecon Public Schools for Facebook and Instagram. And if you just want to follow Sky, Hope, and Luna and Rona's new journey, there are 2 new therapy dogs. You can go to Absecon Schools Therapy Dogs on Instagram.
That's awesome. So I think I'm going to also ask your administrative assistant to send me these links too.
Absolutely.
So I can include them in the show notes. So in that way, everybody can have access and just follow, not so much you personally, but you are there in all these links and websites, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're there. You're the initiator of all this fun. Let's call it what it is. It's fun, and it's enhanced learning, and it's a lot of entertainment, because there is really a lot of entertainment with these incredible dogs. I really would like to thank you for this incredible episode. I could find out myself a lot of things I might not have known, but I think this was going to serve very well many people, because we don't just have teachers, parents, but just anybody interested in education. I think that everybody should be really kind of involved in this to spread more awareness about the importance of this activity. Really, it's so cost effective, but the effectiveness of it is just like, it's beyond. It just doesn't enhance learning only, but it's the social, emotional, and it's all together. Just
And
everything, right? The whole package.
If you took any program and I get really excited about new math programs or literacy programs, but I've never seen anything like this to bring a community together. It is a feel good, it not only serves and what it's intended to do, but the effects it has on your entire school culture and climate.
Exactly.
And the way that it brings people together has been probably the biggest unattended consequence or outcome that I certainly could not have controlled for. The way that people have signed up and volunteered their time and used our dogs to go to the hospital or make reference to it, or parents that are asking for the animals because they hear their children. It has had a complete effect on our entire learning community, and it's all positive and smiles. You just have to do it responsibly.
Yes.
You have to do it with great intent and, and use caution because, we're dealing with people's most prized possessions in their children and their animals.
But you show that it can be done successfully, and this is more than a new math program. This is more than a new reading program. It also helps adults in the school too, who love to see those animals too, right? For whom the presence of these animals are important too. It helps them too. So happier teacher or another staff member, helps the child too. So this is really building the whole school culture. I think that's maybe what sometimes is missing in the understanding of the scope of the impact of it. But we certainly were able to talk about it extensively today. Thank you so much, Dr. Dooley. What I would like to wish you is just even more success with this. I would like to stay myself familiarized with your activity, what's going on, how else this is developing. And thank you so much. And thank you so much, our wonderful audience. Please make sure to follow the show, Get Inspired with Dr. Barb. You could also write a review. We would not say no to that, never, ever. And let us know what you think about this conversation, what you think about the power of therapy animals, what you think about incredible leaders such as principals, but also today superintendents, because this is really just so cool. You have someone who is running the whole district and understanding what's missing. I think that's what we need in our education. We need leaders to have a little bit better understanding. It would really help tremendously teachers. The example starts on top. Usually, a lot of that would be so much easier to make changes like that in the entire school district. Thank you so much, Dr. Dooley. Bye-bye, everybody. See you on social media. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb.